Okay, so we are gathered today to study the law of one and to each of us in our own way seek the truth and seek the heart of the matter. And we are deeply aided in this pursuit by the teachings of Ra. And so we extend our gratitude and our thanks and our love to those of Ra and also to those of the LL Research Group, past and present, and what the heck, future too. For stewarding this material, helping for it to come through and be in existence so that we can gather around it and regard it together, consider it, take what resonates and leave the rest. We offer our thanks, our gratitude, and our love, and we are so blessed to be gathered in this circle in this way. Many thanks.
Thank you, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to also put out there, Aaron and I were recently talking about TOTOH and what we're up to and talking about the study group and just how this material is foundational to, like, it's the foundational material of TOTOH, of like how and why we come together, and just how meaningful it is to have a regular practice of studying this material that reminds us and gets us in touch with oneness. Yeah, awesome. So anybody want to start us off with the reading? We're reading session 30.
I won't be able to do any reading today. I don't have the book.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Aaron, go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, 30.0. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator we communicate now. Questioner, I'm going to make a statement and then let you correct it if I have made any errors. This is the statement. Creation is a single entity or unity. If only a single entity exists, then the only concept of service is service to self. If this single entity subdivides, then the concept of service of one of its parts to the other part is born. From this concept springs the equality of service to self or service to others. It would seem that as the logos subdivided, parts would select each orientation. As individualized entities emerge in space-time, then I would assume that they have polarity. Is this statement correct? I am Ra. This statement is quite perceptive and correct until the final phrase, in which we note that the polarities begin to be explored only at the point when a third density entity becomes aware of the possibility of choice between the concept or distortion of service to self or service to others. This marks the end of what you may call the unself-conscious or innocent phase of conscious awareness. Questioner.
I guess let's pause there.
Okay.
Just because that's one topic.
Sure. Sounds good.
I mean, I think the next topic is a number of Q&As. But yeah, I think that's one whole topic. So let's just start there. So what are they talking about here?
Well, it's quite a paradox that Don's got a
Yeah.
hold of here. You know, he's sort of exposing this, one of the key paradoxes in the law of one, which is like all service is serving the creator. Like there is nothing that anyone could ever do that isn't serving the creator, because the creator is interested in experience, and everything produces experience, everything. So everything is serving the creator. And there's a very real and significant reality to the two metaphysical pathways of service to self and service to other. Like those are true too. And so Don's trying to get at the root of how that happens and how that works.
Yeah. And getting at the root of polarity, like he asks, as individualized entities emerge, I would assume they have polarity. And Ra says everything that he said before that was correct, except for that last part. Polarities begin to be explored only at the point when a third density entity becomes aware of the possibility of choice between the concept or distortion of service to self or service to others.
Right.
Is that because there's no sense of self until third density?
Correct. That's right.
As
Yeah,
soon
but-
as
And so you cannot go forward on one of the paths unless you are aware that there's a choice. That's what it sounds like.
I mean, I think the way that I would put it is you can't serve yourself or another self in any conscious fashion when you don't know that you're a self.
Right. But
So
Ra
Don's,
also said that you have to be aware of the choice.
right.
Right.
Yeah, Don's statement that he asks Ra to comment on is specifically says, as individualized entities emerge in space-time, then I would assume that they have polarity. Well, individualized entities emerge in first and second density, but they don't yet have polarity until they become self-aware, which happens in third density. So that's the distinction that Ra is making there.
Well, and I think also they're not individualized to themselves. You know, like a tree may not. I mean, we don't know, I guess, you know, directly the experience of a tree, but a tree may not have the experience of itself as being individualized or separate.
Right. Which is another way of saying it doesn't have a spirit complex. It doesn't have the idea of being separate. But I still would say
Right.
that it is an individualized entity, even though it doesn't realize it. I mean, a tree is an individualized life form,
Yeah.
as are,
Yeah.
you know, all life forms in first and second density. I mean, a rock is an individualized entity. It's alive. It's conscious, according to Ra.
Yeah. Well, how about we move on to the next topic, mind, body, and spirit, which I think goes until the end of 30.5. Anybody want to read 30.2 to 30.5? Not Kent, Mia, or Sean, or myself.
I think Aaron's going to be doing a lot of reading today.
I'm happy to read.
Great, you read.
Okay. 30.2, questioner, thank you. Would you define mind, body, and spirit separately? I am Ra. These terms are all simplistic descriptive terms which equal a complex of energy focuses. The body, as you call it, being the material of the density which you experience at a given space-time or time-space. This complex of materials being available for distortions of what you would call physical manifestation. The mind is a complex which reflects the inpourings of the spirit and the uppourings of the body complex. It contains what you know as feelings, emotions, and intellectual thoughts in its more conscious complexities. Moving further down the tree of mind, we see the intuition, which is of the nature of the mind, more in contact or in tune with the total beingness complex. Moving down to the roots of mind, we find the progression of consciousness, which gradually turns from the personal to the racial memory to the cosmic influxes, and thus becomes a direct contactor of that shuttle which we call the spirit complex. This spirit complex is the channel whereby the inpourings from all of the various universal, planetary, and personal inpourings may be funneled into the roots of consciousness, and whereby consciousness may be funneled to the gateway of intelligent infinity through the balanced intelligent energy of body and mind. You will see by this series of definitive statements that mind, body, and spirit are inextricably intertwined and cannot continue one without the other. Thus, we refer to the mind-body-spirit complex rather than attempting to deal with them separately. For the work, shall we say, that you do during your experiences is done through the interaction of these three components, not through any one. Questioner, upon our physical death, as we call it, from this particular density and this particular incarnative experience, we lose this chemical body. Immediately after the loss of this chemical body, do we maintain a different type of body? Is there still a mind-body-spirit complex at that point? I am Ra. This is correct. The mind-body-spirit complex is quite intact. The physical body complex you now associate with the term body being but manifestation of a more dense and intelligently informed and powerful body complex. Questioner, is there any loss to the mind or spirit after this transition, which we call death, or any impairment of either because of the loss of this chemical body that we now have? I am Ra. In your terms, there is a great loss of mind complex due to the fact that much of the activity of a mental nature of which you are aware during the experience of this space-time continuum is as much of a surface illusion as is the chemical body complex. In other terms, nothing whatever of importance is lost. The character, or shall we say, pure distillation of emotions and biases, or distortions and wisdoms, if you will, becoming obvious for the first time, shall we say. These pure emotions and wisdoms and bias distortions being, for the most part, either ignored or underestimated during physical life experience. In terms of the spiritual, this channel is then much opened due to the lack of necessity for the forgetting characteristic of third density. That might be a good stopping point, actually.
Okay. Yeah, that seems right. You're right. Yeah, so mind, body, and spirit, defined separately, still are intertwined. And then what is their experience upon death? Is there still mind, body, spirit complex? Yes, it's quite intact. And then the differences of changes by each of those parts upon death. So that's my summary. Let's discuss. It's super fascinating to me that the mind, body, spirit complex is quite intact after physical body complex death. That's fascinating.
Yeah, one comment I'll offer, take it or leave it, is my translation of mind, body, spirit complex is soul. I think when we refer to, like when most people refer to soul, they're referring to, it's kind of the same concept. It's the same idea as what Ra calls a mind, body, spirit complex. Like the mind, body, spirit complex is the thing that persists throughout the entire journey that an individualized entity makes through the octave. It's made up of, its core is whatever idea or essence that each of us carries at our center. Like a soul is a thing. I don't know if it's a thing, but it's something that centers a person, it centers an individual, and it persists across life and death and through the densities. And whatever is at its center seems to have to do with like some unique portion of God's infinite idea. Like we each carry some essential curiosity or creative capacity or part of the harmony of the great song of the universe. And whatever that is persists.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as the mind body spirit complex, I think.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm really, a piece that feels connected to the chat that was going on our threads earlier today, and I don't know, I guess it started a few days ago. I think Sean, maybe you initiated it about AI, and this whole, question that's up, beyond just our TOTOH Collective, of like, can AI become conscious? What is that? And I feel like this piece about the body, like from 30.2, Ross says, the body, as you call it, being the material of the density which you experience at a given space-time or time-space. This complex of materials being available for distortions of what you would call physical manifestation. And then that the body changes is what it sounds like, but the mind body spirit complex remains intact. Like AI, if in this metaphor would be like body because it's form. It is seemingly able to receive input and like process input to a certain extent and like create output, but isn't necessarily having its own experience. And so like body is the physical the complex of materials that gathers around, it seems like, the initial like spark of consciousness that wants to experience. Like, anyway, that's just super fascinating to me, like, because I think we often have the telling of there's a body and the body becomes consciousness comes into the body, but it's actually like the other way around. There's consciousness and consciousness creates a body, or like, the body is contained within consciousness rather than consciousness is contained within the body or something. And that shift has been working on me for a few years. That's something that I've been contemplating. It just is related to the AI, and yeah, it still is fascinating to me to like, we see it in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I'm still grokking that, like, what we see in reverse. Yeah, Aaron.
I think that's so important. I think that's so worth underscoring. Those two, they're like worldviews. And I think they even have names. I think that the name for that, the idea that bodies eventually get a thing called consciousness, is called materialism. I mean, it's a philosophical, it's a defined philosophical perspective. And the corresponding philosophy is called idealism, that consciousness is essential and form is a product of consciousness, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, so that's, as far as I understand, that's the name. Philosophically, those are the two names of those two worldviews. And and understanding that those two worldviews exist and what they are, and understanding that there is a possibility of a worldview where consciousness is essential and form is a product of consciousness, I mean, in my understanding, is totally in congruence with the law of one. I mean, it is what Ra is saying. And it's so profound. I mean, the implications of this are like, they touch everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything when you look at life that way.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it also just changes the, yeah, I mean, everything. It changes the, like, our experience of what well-being means. You know, like we're often so focused on the well-being of the body, which is important, but we lose track of the infinite well-being that's so beyond the body. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that right now. I'm a little spacey.
Mhm.
I have a question, follow up on that. Does AI have a mind? Is it just purely body? Like there's like the computer and the algorithms, and there's like the physical, like electricity running through the algorithms, calculating all the stuff. Does it like ChatGPT, right? Like you ask me a question, gives up, like, I mean, it's all just, you know, it's literally just predicting the next word. Like it's trained on all the internet, so it knows like how humans talk. Does it think? Does that count as thinking? Like, so the question I'm trying to understand here is like, could AI pass for a mind body or body mind complex? So like the basic animals. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead. I think that's one of the topics is like you take like a ant or a bee, right? It just sort of follows its instincts, just executes a set of instructions. Could that be comparable to AI? Like yeah, does AI, would you say AI has a mind complex?
You feel
Aaron.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Chong, and I think it really gets to the heart of, you know, the larger question of sentience, and is that even possible? Can and will AI ever approach sentience? The way I think about it, the way I would answer your question is, like the mind-body-spirit complex, each of those three portions of the unified thing that we call mind-body-spirit complex, they do have distinct functions. And this is how I think of it. Like the body complex function is to sense. It senses through, you know, in our experience, the five senses: smell, touch, taste, hearing, and what's the other one?
Sight.
Feeling. No, touch, that's touch. Anyway, whatever, the five senses. That's the body complex. Its function is to sense. The mind complex's function is two parts. It's to analyze with the intellect and to intuit, which is contacting the spirit complex, which is a different kind of sensing. Intuition is kind of a different kind of sensing. It's not sensing the material world, it's sensing the spiritual world.
Yeah.
So that's the function of the mind, is intuition and intellect, analysis. And the function of the spirit complex is more mysterious, but it seems to be about regulating the activity of light that is the uppouring and downpouring energies, primal energies of God. And so each person,
That's the function of the spirit complex, you're saying?
yeah. So each person is basically like always in the process of like modulating alignment between their essential desire that they carry in their core and whatever's going on around them. And that has to do with the spirit complex. So it's like alignment. It's like alignment with truth, alignment with our core desire. So those are the three functions.
Where do you get that from, Rob?
Yeah, that's from Rob.
Where do you get that? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, that's a synthesis, and I'm paraphrasing and whatever. I'm extending what Ra has said, but I think that's fair to say. That's what I've learned from Ra. Okay, so then applying that to Shang's question, does AI have a mind? I think AI is totally a body-mind complex. I think that all the hardware that runs the AI is its body complex, and all of the electrical activity of the compute power and the analysis that it's able to perform through mathematics, the large language model, or whatever software it's running, that electrical impulse is doing work, and the work is analysis. But it's not intuition. AI does not have intuition. It just has compute power. And I don't think it can never have a spirit complex because it doesn't have its own essence. Its essence is extended to it in a way from humanity, from the people who coded it. But I think AI can be considered a mind-body complex, as could all, in a way, all human-based creations have, you know, could be called mind-body complexes, like a television or a, I mean, you know, a hammer. It's made up of stuff, and stuff is alive. The iron and the wood and the hammer is alive. So I think it's fair to call it a mind-body complex, but it lacks spirit. And what we, you know, what we're exploring in this session is, what is the spirit complex? It's that kind of unique portion of entities that comes in third density that is their sense of self-awareness. Anyway, so I hope that addressed the question. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating question. If you could clarify, like, I can understand how maybe a TV would be a mind-body complex, but how do you mean a hammer? How would that have mind?
Well, we might just pause on it and get to it later, because later in this session, they talk about first density life. And Ra says it's a semantic challenge to know whether to call it a mind or a body. They call it mind-body complexes.
Yeah.
So everything that has physical existence has at least a mind and a body complex. There are no body complexes that have no mind. Everything's a portion of the mind of God.
Right. I see what you're saying. Okay.
I have another
Sean,
question.
You want to jump in? Yeah, go ahead.
This is a sort of a different direction. I am really interested in, like, the body, the idea of a body complex after death. So, like, time space, I've always interpreted as, like, I mean, that's life between lives. I thought it was just like the realm of thoughts, you know? But then, like, there's a body, it just makes me realize how little I know about time space and how it works. But there's, like, the idea of a body complex within time space, like, how does that work? Like, I almost imagine, like, the body is created from thought in some way. And this also goes back to I guess what Roz says about first density, about, like, how do you, like, what even is the difference between body and mind? Is it just is it just semantics, or, like, form maker body? Like that makes me question, like, my understanding of the definition of body. Like, it doesn't have to be a chemical, physical thing. Yeah, I don't really have a question. It's more like, what is the body like in time space? Like, what?
Yeah. It's such a good question, Sean. I totally share it with you. I got confused in this session too, because Ra talks about a body in time space. Yeah, in 30.2, they say the body, as you call it, being the material of the density which you experience at a given space-time or time-space. That confuses me, because I think in another session they've said that time-space is kind of more made up of mind and spirit, and body is holds less sway in time-space. So I was, up until this session, I was kind of resting more into the understanding that bodies don't really have much of a presence in time-space. It's more about thought and spirit and reflection and review and, imagination, and less about physicality. So, I mean, I guess the best I can do with it is that it's like a body form in space-time would be more akin to what we would call a thought form. Like, I don't think there's a physical reality in time space, at least not like we experience it now. But maybe we do have, maybe we are able to assemble a so-called body, and maybe we interact with so-called bodies, but they're just made of light, pure light. I mean, everything's made of light, even in physical reality, but more dense light, less gross physical material, chemical material. But anyway, Shang, I'm just saying I had the same question. I had the same challenge with bodies and time space.
And didn't Ross say like the body in time space is more dense than the body? And did I hear that right? So it's
You
almost
did.
like it's the
More
time space
dense and
body.
more powerful.
So maybe it's like
Yeah.
the blueprint of the body.
Hmm.
It's like but then like that makes me think it's a thought rather than a physical body. It's like the body in time space is just like a thought template of the body, which completely redefines my understanding of what a body is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and it relates to
what
when Ra says that the body is a creature of mind. That's important, I think, here in this conversation. Ra has said in another session that the body is the creature of the mind.
yeah. What it also brings to mind for me is, where our understanding of reality in this density is through understanding space-time, which is like my body in space-time is made of the material of this density, is made of form, and it takes up space and it travels through time. Like that's what my one way of looking at my body. Like it's made of the material of this density, form, takes up space and travels through time. And so I just wonder, like, if in time space the body is made of the material of that density, whatever density, like, because there's fourth density time space, there's fifth density time space.
Mhm.
There's so different material of the density, whatever that means. I don't rock, but maybe the body takes up time and travels through space. So, and I don't know that that's true, but just kind of like doing the like flip of like, okay, if this is what's happening in space time, maybe the opposite is what's happening in time space. So a body made of the material of whatever density that takes up time and travels through space. Maybe that's what a body is in time space. Don't know.
Well, another way of translating that, what you just said, BJ, is that like in time space, um, we don't really move around in space. We kind of like we are sort of fixed in space, but we're completely free to move like in imagination. So we can move easily and with a lot of fidelity through past and present. I mean, yeah, past and future. So we can
Yeah.
conceive of literally what previous experiences we've had, and we can also imagine future experiences in order to refine our next incarnation. I think that's a lot of the experience of what happens in time space, or at least where we're at now, at least in third density, has to do with like analyzing previous experience and getting ready for future experience, getting ready for the next incarnation
Yeah.
in space-time. I mean,
Yeah.
space-time. So a lot of it is about
Yeah.
just like you can travel through it's almost like you can like go back in the previous life and do it 100 different ways. Like,
Right.
what if I would have said this? What if I would have done this? What if I would have, and you can just travel all of them.
Yeah.
Like you're not
I mean,
limited
it
in
reminds me
time.
of what you were saying this morning about the dream that you had. You had a dream this morning that was like sort of just like that. That was like, okay, and then we'll do it this way, and then we'll do it, or it was something like that. It was iterative. So yeah, maybe the body of time space is more like an idea and refining an idea or something like that. It's more or that's what's coming to me now, is to wonder, like maybe it's more an idea, an identity, you know, something like that, and refining refining that idea.
Yeah, I think that the material of time space is light, and then you know, from density to density, the light just vibrates faster and faster, which is sort of another way of saying it just becomes more and more full of the knowing of God's infinite reality or infinite idea. And then in space-time, it's like it's still light, but the light kind of like seems to you know, manifest as what we call material. And again, even that changes as we get higher in densities. I think by the time we're in fifth density space-time, it's a light-based physical reality. Even the physical reality is still light-based. But somehow fifth density space-time is still nested within the density. And I think we'll read later in this session, like all the densities of the octave all coexist. They all are there. Like we could see fourth through seventh density. Ross says this later in this session. We could see them if they weren't cloaked, basically, consciously cloaked from us. So even the higher densities are still in space-time, are still participating in or adjacent to what we experience as physical reality, gross physical chemical matter. Anyway, who knows?
Yeah.
I started reading a book called Flipside, which is have you guys heard of that? Flipside? It's an extension of Dr. Newton's Life Between Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls.
Cool.
It's not written by him, but it's written by a person who interviewed him, which is why I picked up. But like going back to the idea of bodies between lives. So like under hypnotherapy, like souls are interacting with other souls. Like they seem to have some form. Like they sit in classrooms and do things, and like they can like look at themselves and have color, and like they appear as like sparks of light. I wonder if like there must be like this goes back to like, is there such thing as physical material in the afterlife? But there does seem to be like, if we interpret the body as the sensory input of like what, like there's a focus, like you're not just like experiencing all things at once, right? You still have a focus of experience. So I wonder if that whatever vehicle of light which is housing the consciousness, I wonder if that's the definition of the body here. I don't know. It's certainly different than space-time, physical, chemical bodies for sure. I don't know. Maybe it is like very, like whatever the concept of a light body is. I wonder if it becomes more synonymous. Like I wonder if a light body is closer to the body in time space. I don't know. I don't know what's any of this.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, Sean. I think in 30.3, when Ra says, after death, the mind-body-spirit complex is quite intact. The physical body complex you now associate with the term body being but a manifestation of a more dense and intelligently informed and powerful body complex. I think that's a light body. I mean, I think the light body that is the blueprint for our physical body, the light body, is totally more powerful and more informed, intelligently informed. It's more pure. It's a more pure representation of the the vehicle that we inhabit. I think it's good. I think it's a good. I think it's a really good insight. You know, specifically light bodies.
Well, I think let's keep moving. So I think let's read maybe just to 30.5 and then discuss and then go on. But I also know that I'm not I'm not the clearest today, so maybe that's not what makes the most sense. Would you be willing to read 30.5, Aaron?
I sure would.
Thank you.
Okay, 30.5. Questioner, I would like to know how the mind-body-spirit complexes originate. How, going back as far as necessary, do they originate by spirit forming mind and mind forming body? Can you tell me this? I am Ra. We ask you to consider that you are attempting to trace evolution. This evolution is as we have previously described, and the footnote there says it was described in session 13, Q&As 15 through 21. The consciousness being first, in first density, without movement, a random thing. Whether you may call this mind or body complex is a semantic problem. We call it mind-body complex, recognizing always that in the simplest iota of this complex exists in its entirety the one infinite creator. This mind-body complex then, in second density, discovering the growing and turning towards the light, thus awakening what you may call the spirit complex, that which intensifies the upward spiraling towards the love and light of the infinite creator. The addition of this spirit complex, though apparent rather than real, it having existed potentially from the beginning of space-time, perfects itself by graduation into third density. When the mind-body-spirit complex becomes aware of the possibility of service to self or other self, then the mind-body-spirit complex is activated. Do you want me to keep going? Or just that one?
I was thinking just that one.
Okay.
Any further comments about this?
Could you read the last sentence again, please?
Sure. When the mind-body-spirit complex becomes aware of the possibility of service to self or other self, then the mind-body-spirit complex is activated.
That's interesting. What does it mean to be activated?
I think it means that the spirit complex is present throughout first and second density, but it isn't potentiated or activated until one, self-awareness is at least like at a basic level present, and then two, the idea of being of service to self or being of service to others, specifically, that idea becomes a part of the thought process of the entity.
Right, but in the first part of the sentence you read, it sounds like the mind-body-spirit complex already exists before it becomes aware of the choice.
It does, but it's not activated. It's only
activated,
in
right?
potentiation.
Okay, so what does it mean to be in potentiation then versus being activated? How is a mind-body-spirit complex in potentiation? What does that look like?
I mean, my take on it is that. Go ahead, BJ.
I think it's like being aware that there is a choice, but not having made the choice. It's like standing at a fork in the road.
Right, but that's what Ra says in that sentence. Ra says that's how the mind-body-spirit complex becomes activated, by becoming aware of the choice.
Well, it seems like the activation, well, I don't know. Yeah, I might be interpreting it incorrectly.
Yeah,
But
it's that
to me,
that
the
is
activation is like the choice starts to come online. Like that
right,
is the
right,
activation.
right.
Like
Yeah,
before, I didn't realize there was a fork in the road or something.
right.
Like I'm
Yeah,
just going along, but then it's like, oh, there, I can go okay or something. Like so there's like a different kind of awareness. That's the way I take it. What about you,
and
Amy? Oh, go ahead, Ken.
and yeah, and not. I mean, it seems pretty clear to me that many third density entities are not aware of the choice. I mean, if you talk to most people, they're not aware that there's a choice to be made. So that would mean that those third density entities are not activated, I think. Whatever it means to be activated. Yeah.
I have a comment. Like a mind body spirit complex, if it's a soul, like I've heard like animals have group souls, they don't have individual souls. So it seems to me like as soon as you hit their density, you become activated because you're. I don't think it's dependent on like polarizing, and I think as soon as like you become an individualized, like as soon as you realize like, hey, I'm more than just like part of an animal. Like I can do. I'm a me. You activate the mind body spirit complex. Like I
Right.
think the
Yeah.
whole
That's why
yeah.
that's why that's that's why this sentence confuses me.
I think this might clear it up for you, Ken. I'm not sure, but my response to your query is, I don't think an entity needs to be able to say, ah, I am aware that I am either choosing service to self or service to other. Like it's not that level of self-consciousness that allows this to take place, that allows the mind-body spirit complex to become activated. I literally think it's about saying I. Like as soon as an
Okay.
entity can say I, which a dog or a deer or an elephant don't say. I mean, maybe elephants and, I don't know, there's some advanced second density that like they just begin to like have the sense, the internal mental processing to think of themselves as separate, especially after they're named, like pets after they're named. But I literally think it's the sense that the experience of I, the internal experience of the conception of I is what we're talking about here. Because I then has
That makes sense.
That
thou.
makes sense.
Like I has like, oh, then you're not I'm I. So am I going to like feed I or am I going to feed you? Like
Right.
that
Right.
process doesn't have to be conscious, but it begins to become a part of the decision-making process that we all go through once we have the sense of I.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So expanding on that, then like Raw is basically saying like as soon as you have I, you it's you have to like start polarizing, right? Like there's no like by definition, as soon as you hit that threshold of third density and you're an I, you're either acting in service to self or service to others, regardless of whether or not you consciously realize it.
Yep, I think so. And when we get into the study of the archetypical mind, it becomes apparent that in third density in our archetypical mind, our sun, the design of the mind that our sun has given us, it's inflected towards negativity. It's inflected towards taking care of the self. Like there's an automatic bias in third density, in our third density, to be negatively polarizing, to be interested in the needs of the self. And it takes work to realize that, oh, actually, to care for the other is not only pleasurable and satisfying, but also, serves the greater whole that I really am. But anyway, there's this whole pretty profound teaching that comes through in studying the archetypical mind that many of the cards, many of the archetypes are kind of biased towards the negative. Actually, in the very beginning, we're biased towards the negative polarization.
Yeah, and the native Ross says that they
You're cutting out, Ken.
expect, and which
We're losing you.
means that the majority of native third density entities on the planet are in the sinkhole of indifference and service to self, basically. More service to self than service to others, but they don't reach. Are you losing me?
We only caught a little bit of that, maybe half of it.
Okay, yeah, I'm on the road driving. Should I repeat it?
Yeah, I'd
So-
love to hear. I really would love to hear what you're saying, Kent.
Okay, so Ross says that a majority of the native third density entities on the planet are in the sinkhole of indifference, which is between 50 and 95% service to self,
Right.
basically. So they are more service to self than they are service to others, but they don't reach the 95% needed to graduate on the negative path.
Right.
Did you catch? You catch?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Thanks for repeating.
right.
Right. And they say that Ross says that in the end of this session, they say that there are few to harvest.
Right, exactly. So that I'm just saying that because that lines up with what you were saying, Aaron.
Well, and I want to say one more thing about this whole idea of activating the spirit complex. And the idea that the spirit complex was already there throughout first and second density. The sense I make of that is that the spirit complex is there, but it's kind of borrowed from the logos. Like this, my picture of first and second density is that like, there's absolutely a spirit complex. There's spirit at the center of everything. Like spirit is like literally the pathway of how anything that's created is connected back to oneness. That's spirit.
Yeah.
And it's always, it centers everything, whether it's conscious or, whether it's self-aware or not. But in first and second density, because there's not a sense of like individualized self-awareness, the spirit complex would be a portion of the logos's spirit, is how I think about it. And it's not until we become, we gain the I faculty that we then sort of like, the logos passes us the baton of free will. And then we as individualized portions of the logos then begin to act as free agents with free will, as eyes, as little eyes.
Yeah.
No,
That makes
I
sense.
was
And I think we've talked about that same kind of time in the lifespan before, when there was the question about when does the individual become responsible for their own choices. Seems like that might be the same moment. Do you want to go, Kent?
Yeah, I was gonna say my understanding was that a species of animal has a group soul, like Shang was saying earlier. So does that fit with what you were saying, Aaron?
I think so. I think it's compatible.
Okay.
Yep.
Is the spirit synonymous with like the will and the desire and like the ability to manifest? I'm trying to get a better
Seems like it
idea
is to me.
of what spirit is
Yeah.
in more concrete terms rather than like, hey, it's the source.
Well, I think it's like individualized portion of the source. Like it is how the creator explores the creator's desire. So it's a focus like that. That's one of the ways that Ra describes free will, or how I understand it anyway, is like, to find focus, which I think the focus is sort of like, what is it that you're interested in? What is it that this, sort of refining an idea, Like, for instance, you know, I'm interested in forgiveness, or I'm interested in beauty, I'm interested in strength, or, you know, I mean, I don't know that it actually plays out that way, you know, like our word complexes aren't necessarily like how focus plays out. But I think it's something like, it's an idea of the creator, like the fullness of creation focuses to allow an experience, is kind of how it makes sense to me. And I don't know if I'm right about that, but that's my working sort of definition of what the I am is, that that I experience when I'm in meditation. Like, that's the I am that I can find, which I think is the same as spirit.
Did I don't remember if we already read this. Did we read the part where it says that the spirit complex plays a bigger role in time space, something like that? Did Ross say that?
Yeah, I think Rod did say that. I think they say that time space has a stronger affinity with mind and spirit. Not in this session, but in a previous session.
No, I think there was something in this session saying there was something about. Okay, maybe I misremembered.
Well, I think, Sean, once again, I appreciate the question a lot. You know, the question is like, what really are we talking about? We're talking about spirit, and does it relate to the will? I think those are fantastic, really, really interesting questions. And I think let's go ahead and keep reading, because I do think that there's some things we haven't covered yet that might draw out more.
Yes.
And maybe let's just go ahead and read the last 10 or whatever,
great.
and then we can discuss.
That sounds great. You would like to be our reader?
I can read unless anybody else wants to. Anyone else want to jump in?
No, that's fine.
Okay, 30.6. Questioner, thank you. I don't wish to cover ground that we have covered before, but it sometimes is helpful to restate these concepts for complete clarity, since words are a poor tool for what we do. Just as a passing point, I was wondering, on this planet during the second density, I believe there was habitation at some time-space of bipedal entities and what we call the dinosaurs. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. These two types of entities seem to be incompatible, you might say, with each other. I don't know. Can you tell me the reason behind both types of entities inhabiting the same space-time? I am Ra. Consider the workings of free will as applied to evolution. There are paths that the mind-body complex follows in an attempt to survive, to reproduce, and to seek in its fashion that which is unconsciously felt as the potential for growth. These two arenas or paths of development being two among many. Just before we go on, which two are we talking about? Which two types of entities are we talking about? Dinosaurs and what?
People?
People?
Bipedal animals.
Ah,
Right. Bipedal.
got it. Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying. Shall I continue reading? Okay. 30.8, questioner. I see. A news program I saw a couple of weeks ago raised the question of why the dinosaurs vanished, you might say, from our planet suddenly. I know this is unimportant, but I just wondered what the reason was. I am Ra. These entities could not feed their body complexes. Questioner. Now, in second density, the concept of bisexual reproduction first originates. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Can you tell me the philosophy behind this mechanism of propagation of the bodily complex? I am Ra. The second density is one in which the groundwork is being laid for third density work. In this way, it may be seen that the basic mechanisms of reproduction capitulate into a vast potential in third density for service to self, service to other self, and to self. This being not only by the functions of energy transfer, but also by the various services performed due to the close contact of those who are, shall we say, magnetically attracted one to the other. These entities thus having the opportunities for many types of service, which would be unavailable to the independent entity. Questioner: was the basic reason, the original reason for this then to increase opportunity for experience of the one creator? Is this correct? I am Ra. This is not merely correct, but is the key to that which occurs in all densities. Questioner: does the process of bisexual reproduction, or the philosophy of it, play a part in the spiritual growth of second density entities? I am Ra. In isolated instances, this is so, due to efficient perceptions upon the part of entities or species. For the greater part, by far, this is not the case in second density, the spiritual potentials being those of third density. Questioner: I was wondering if the male cat Gandalf has benefited by that mechanism in some way, or by other mechanisms, in increasing spiritual potential or understanding. I am Ra. We examine this information and find it harmless. The second density entity, sound vibration Gandalf, is a rare sample of its species, due first to previous individualization, secondly, due to a great amount of investment in this particular life experience. This is the greatest catalyst in this entity's progress. It is very unusual, as we have said. However, the experiences of bisexual reproduction, which were of the nature of the entity Gandalf, were, to a small extent, of spiritual benefit, due to an unusual relationship with another entity, this also what you call a cat. This entity also being of an unusually third density orientation or investment from previous life experiences. Thus, the formation of what could be seen to be recognizably love did exist in this relationship. It's so cute. Questioner: thank you. Can you give me a brief history of the metaphysical principles of the development of each of our planets around the sun and their function with respect to evolution of beings? I am Ra. We shall give you a metaphysical description only of those planets upon which individual mind-body-spirit complexes have been, are, or shall be experienced. You may understand the other spheres to be a part of the Logos. We take the one known as Venus. This planetary sphere was one of rapid evolution. It is our native Earth, and the rapidity of the progress of the mind-body-spirit complexes upon its surface was due to harmonious interaction. Upon the entity known to you as Mars, as you have already discussed, this entity was stopped in mid-third density, thus being unable to continue in progression due to the lack of hospitable conditions upon the surface. This planet shall be undergoing healing for some of your space-time millennia. The planet which you dwell upon has a metaphysical history well known to you, and you may ask about it as you wish. However, we have spoken to a great degree upon this subject. The planet known as Saturn has a great affinity for the infinite intelligence, and thus it has been dwelled upon in its magnetic fields of time-space by those who wish to protect your system. The planetary entity known to you as Uranus is slowly moving through the first density and has the potential of moving through all densities. Questioner: thank you. I was wondering if any of the other planets had a metaphysical evolution. You stated yesterday that much of this major galactic system dwells spiritually as a part of the Logos. By that, do you mean that nearer the center of this major galactic system, that the stars there do not have planetary systems? Is this correct? I am Ra. This is incorrect. The Logos has distributed itself throughout your galactic system. However, the time-space continua of some of your more central sun systems is much further advanced. Questioner: well then, could you generally say that as you get closer to the center of this major galactic system, that there is this greater spiritual density, I'll use the term, or that this general spiritual quality is advanced at that area? I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this session, as this instrument is somewhat uncomfortable. We do not wish to deplete the instrument. The spiritual density, or mass, of those more towards the center of your galaxy is known. However, this is due simply to the varying timelessness states during which the planetary spheres may coalesce. This process of space-time beginnings occurring earlier, shall we say, as you approach the center of the galactic spiral. We welcome any short tape ends. Questioner, the instrument would like to know if you could tell her whether or not this item, which is called Sam Millar's polarizer, would help her physical well-being. Can you do that? I am Ra. As we scan the instrument, we find anomalies of the magnetic field, which are distorted towards our abilities to find narrowband channel into this instrument's mind-body-spirit complex. The polarizer of which you speak, as it is, would not be helpful. A careful reading of this instrument's aura by those gifted in this area, and subsequent alterations of the magnetizing forces of this polarizer would assist the entity, Sam, in creating such a polarizer that would be of some aid to the instrument. However, we would suggest that no electrical or magnetic equipment not necessary for the recording of our words be brought into these sessions, for we wish no distortions that are not necessary. Questioner, thank you. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, this instrument is well balanced and the contact is as it should be. This instrument has certain difficulties of a distortion you would call the muscular spasm, thus making the motionless position uncomfortable. Thus we leave the instrument. I am Ra. You are doing well, my friends. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one creator. Adonai.
Thank you. Thank you, is what I meant to say.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, jump in.
So, okay, I had a thought about time space. And maybe, so one of the things that Ross said about space time is like, oh, like, my impression was that like you need to cycle back and forth between space time and time space because you don't do work in time. At least the nature of the work being done is different. And like, in order to really like polarize, it seems like you need to be in space time and do the work with the candle. Whereas in time space, you sort of see everything. And I've been trying to reconcile that with like, but like clearly there's a lot of work being done in time space. Like Ra goes to time space and makes the pyramids. Like there's a lot of stuff being done in time space. Like why can't you grow in time space? That's what I was always wondering. And I'm starting to think that like the thing that's missing in time space is experience. Like I don't think you can experience. I think the nature of experience is fundamentally different in time space in a way that you just don't grow as much as you would in space time. So like Ra made the pyramids. Like I mean, people are like, it seems like most of creation happens in time space, and then it manifests in space time. But maybe like when you're in time space, you just don't experience it in a way in which you would grow, like you would progress from it. It was I don't know why I thought of that. It was all this stuff about timelessness and like yeah, it's just about that came to mind.
Oh man, that's such a central and important question. Sean. I think that's
Yeah.
a great question. One thing, I'll just start by saying, like, so my understanding of Ra's working of the pyramids was that they designed the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza, in time space, but they manifested in space time. And that's where, I mean, you guys, the pyramid, the mystery of the pyramid that continues to exist on the planet right now is so profound. It's so huge. Like people, like so many humans are so interested in, like, wait, how did they build the pyramid? How did they build those things? Right? That's still having so much impact on humanity. And all that impact is happening in space-time. And it's directly to your point, Sean, of like the evolution that is kind of associated with, you know, the pyramids is happening in space-time. Like they could have just conceived of the thought of the pyramid in time space and left it there and never made it. And it wouldn't have all the, you know, if that would have been their choice or whatever, if that would have been what happened. I mean, I think it's supporting what you're saying. Like there just wouldn't be as much evolution. Like the changes in consciousness of the creator wouldn't have happened in the same way if they just thought of the Great Pyramid of Giza and developed the idea of it and the blueprint of it and just left it there, left it in time space. And like maybe even there, like we could all go interact with it if we wanted to when we were in the life between lives or whatever. Like we could go check out their blueprint as an idea, but it's not until they actually made it. It's not until actually like things happen in space-time that, you know, for whatever reason, it gives creator like the opportunity to experience it. Like you're saying, Sean, like the experience of it in space-time does seem to have a very, very sacred and special and profound quality in the creator's capacity to know itself or to experience itself. Like space-time is a special context. It's very different than time-space.
So that makes me, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think a big piece of the difference for me is like, and I don't know, definitely like offer the caveat that I often offer that's like, I could be totally wrong. But like, I think the illusion in the form-based reality of space-time is kind of like getting to experience the self as, certainly behind the veil, getting to experience the self as seemingly separate. So like the material reality seems to be real. And I think like even with the veil lifted, it seems like in space-time, there's still a way that the dream appears to be real, which is what gives the creator experience. Like there's still like a I'm not all of it, just having an idea of having an experience. I am this, having this experience. Anyway, so that seems important to me, and I think that happens in space-time.
I haven't ever thought about this really.
Well, and Chong had something else he wanted to say.
Okay,
too.
great. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just gonna bounce back what you said about like it almost makes me think like it's almost we have mini cycles between space time and time space here, where it's like, oh, I can play out how a situation will happen in my mind. I can have all these fantasies about doing things. I could dream about like, oh, I'm gonna start a business, I'm gonna be rich one day and blah blah blah. But it's not like reality doesn't quite play out always the same. It's not until you actually take that step. Like imagining it doesn't make you grow, right? It's the doing it and like the struggle that makes you grow from it. It's all that's what came to mind based off what you had said.
Yeah, and the thing that I was gonna say kind of adds on to that, which is like, so taking the example of like, oh, I want to get rich. Well, to get rich, you have to sort of sacrifice like the other things that you would do otherwise. So like, I think sacrifice has like is a big part of it. Like in space-time, I mean, I don't know if any of you know all remember, but there's like a card, the Hanged Man in the archetypes in the tarot. And one of the key things about the Hanged Man is sacrifice. Like the body, to be in a body, you have to give things up. Like everything we choose in space-time has a correlating like thing we don't choose, sort of. So to like choose a life where we really focus on making a lot of money and becoming rich, well, we have to sacrifice the parts of us that might choose to spend more time with our family or give more to our community or whatever it is. We're developing whatever else, we have to give up something to pursue the idea of being rich and being wealthy. And no matter what life we're choosing, we're always giving something else up. And I feel like that's a part of it. Like in space-time, we have to sacrifice, we have to make choices. We have to prioritize the complex of desires that are within us. And there's something about that prioritization and sacrifice that I feel like is somehow really powerful. It helps the creator sort through all of its desires, its infinite desires, and like evolve. Like it itself evolves, the logos evolves, and the creator evolves through our sacrifices.
Yeah. I think to me that comes back to the thought that I was sharing before about focus. Like if I'm going to focus on business, and that's where my spotlight is, there's all these things that don't make it into the spotlight. They're hanging back in the shadows. I can't do business and be a master meditator or whatever, like whatever things don't. Yeah.
Right. But in time space, you could. Like in time space, you could spend, whatever. I don't know how time operates in time space, but you get the idea. You could spend so much time in time space and like reflect on that life where you focus on business. The last life, you got super rich, you were super successful. But you could also go back and play it again and see like, what would have happened when I was like 18 years old if I would have like committed to my family, or if I would have committed to community service, or if I would have committed to art, you can go experience all of them without sacrificing, but it doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't have the same quality because there's, you can it's just imagination. There's
less investment.
Yeah. And it doesn't write upon the scroll of livingness in the same way that space-time, when you actually make a choice in space-time, it makes a mark. It gets recorded in the Akashic records in some distinct way that doesn't happen in time space.
Yeah. Like if you drop the mug and the mug breaks, it's now broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost think of it like a difference between reading a book and actually doing it, right? In time space, you're reading the book. It's also like what you said makes me think of like you're interacting directly with the mind, body, spirit totality, and that you're just like exploring the map in a way.
Versus taking the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That resonates for me too. Yeah.
There's a few minutes left, and I wonder if anyone has any thoughts about Saturn. With this question, Rob, that Don brings up about the planets and, which ones have evolving life on them or will, metaphysical evolution. And they mentioned Saturn. I'm curious to hear about if anyone has any thoughts about that. And they skipped Maldek, did they? They didn't even mention Maldek.
They did skip Maldek.
Yeah,
right.
Strange.
And I also wonder about many of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, because many of them have a lot of water on them, like Ganymede and Europa and Titan. They have a lot of water.
right?
Yeah. Well, so on
Yeah.
Maldek, we would say that mind, body, spirit complexes have been, but it's possible that on those moons where there's water, there may not have been mind, body, spirit complexes. Unknown. Okay, so Saturn.
Yes, but the phrase or the paragraph, Ross says the planet known as Saturn has a great affinity for infinite intelligence, and thus it has been dwelled upon in its magnetic fields of time-space by those who wish to protect your system.
So they already have inhabitants in time space, but is Ross saying that it also has the potential to develop life in space time?
I mean, that's kind of my question. It's like, it doesn't seem, they don't
Right.
seem to, their answer doesn't seem to suggest that like there was an evolving civilization that went through the standard densities and then eventually made it to the point where there was like the Guardians or the Confederation, whatever, ended up on Saturn. It seems like Saturn as a personality, as a planet, like Saturn itself is somehow in love with God, or, you know,
Hmm.
and then
I
because
bet.
of that, because Saturn is so holy or so, you know, is so interested in the sacred relationship with the creator, that the guardians or the beings from the octave or the Confederation of Planets in Service of the Infinite Creator chose Saturn for its base of operations to like watch over our solar system, to help protect it.
I'm gonna make a hypothesis here, which I think it's probably mathematical. I bet it's some sort of mathematical property of like harmonic resonance or something, in which Saturn just has certain properties. I think it's funny that Ross says like Saturn, the way that Ra describes it is Saturn has an affinity for infinite intelligence. My interpretation is like every system probably has different mathematical properties, and certain planets are just more favorable mathematically to do certain types of work. And I imagine Saturn has those properties for the type of this specific type of work, which also I find it fascinating that they say time space and not like the work is like going back to like what we discussed about the difference between time space and time space time, that the guardians are residing in time space.
Yeah.
The way you're talking about the mathematical, I can't even recall the words that you used, but it just pinged back to me, Sean, your question about what is a soul or what is spirit, and it feels like, oh, that could be, but like whatever it is that you just said about Saturn feels like it possibly could be an answer to the question that you brought up before of like, what is a soul, you know, that I was answering, Aaron was answering too, but what I remember I said was about the focus and the interest, like split up spark of the creator. Anyway, it could be a mathematical question. I'm so fuzzy headed. Anyway, I'm complete.
BG says, yes, math.
I just think whatever it is that you're in touch with and on the track of right now related to Saturn, to me, energetically points back to the question you had earlier. I don't know exactly how, but see also.
Yeah, I wonder about what form, if the gas giants like Saturn and Uranus develop life forms in space-time, what form that's entirely different from life on Earth? Would they be formed from the substance of the gaseous masses of the planets, like floating entities floating in the gas clouds of those planets? Or another possibility I've thought of is, you know, they do have solid cores beneath all the gas, you know. So could there be some event in the solar system that would blow away the gas from those planets and just leave the solid inner core? And then life could develop on that solid inner core. It's just things I'm think about sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that comes up for me is reading Walter Russell's book, not the one we studied, but the other one called The Universal One. He does a whole treatment of the solar system and the planets, and he has a fascinating like take on the evolution of solar systems and our solar system. And from Walter Russell's perspective, all the planetary bodies, the physical planets, the spheres, were born of the sun. They came from the sun, and they traveled outward from the sun. You know, one by one, the sun births planets. And Ron never, there's nothing Ra says that I can tell that like fully corroborates that. But I also don't feel like there's anything that about that concept that is counter to what Ra says. But the planets that are closer in towards the sun have a higher potential, and then as they move outward, they change in their potential, and they often become more gaseous and less dense because of their overall potential. Anyway, there's a whole teaching there, and it's fascinating for anybody who's interested in that kind of thing. I can share a PDF or something of that book.
Have you guys seen the videos of like sound waves making shapes? Like if you play a certain sound wave?
Yeah, totally.
Like I was under the like I did this reading once where like this lady was like, "Oh my god, like your guides are showing me how solar systems are formed. They're sung into existence." And that makes sense to me. And that like the whole idea of like the sun sings some song, some harmonic song that forms the shape of the system, and then the sand, which is the interstellar cloud, and it forms the shapes based off the song. And it's the sun that in time space like spins all just like the pyramids, like figures out what song it wants to sing, and it sings the song, and then the solar system takes shape based off that particular song.
Yeah. That reminds me of a scene in one of the Narnia books. It may be the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like that one. But anyway, Aslan, who is like a representative for Jesus, or like the Christ being, sings into existence life on the planet, and like it's a really beautiful scene. And it just reminds me of that. And you get to kind of witness it through the telling of the story.
I love that imagery. I love the imagery of the each solar system being a song. And I've had that metaphor even down to the level of humans too, like each of us, like, our mind, body, spirit complex is our soul. Like we're some like much, much more specific portion of the song that is our planet, and the song that is our solar system. Like it just gets more and more and more specific. Like the song just gets, it's like a fractal. It's like it's this big, beautiful cosmic song, and we're all part of it, and we're all unique harmony within it. And it just gets more and more and more specific. And it's all based on like the larger song that we're a part of. Like each of our songs is part of the planet's song, and our planet's song is a part of the solar system's song, and our solar system song is a part of the galaxy song. It's all part of the primordial Om, or something like that.
And the planet song connected to the solar system song.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, BJ. I was going there too. That's funny.
It's cute. That reminds me of Claudel's cute little song that he played for us.
Right.
All right. I think that's our time. Thank you all as a reminder, this was our last study group of 2023. So we will gather again January 7th
Next year.
next
Year.
year.
See y'all next year.
Oh, see you next year. Well,
Next year.
I'm gonna see you at 4D.
Oh,
I'll
Happy
great.
see
New
you at 4D.
Year's.
Happy
See you
New Year.
guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Happy
y'all.
New Year.
Bye.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas. Yeah,
Happy
bye-bye.
holidays.
Oh, bad. Bye.
Yeah.